Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Everything is Black and White podcast. My name is Mark Carruthers. We're going to be taking a look forward to Saturday's FA Cup fourth round tie at Aston Villa, a tough test for Eddie Howe and his players, but one that they go into on the back of an impressive win and a much-needed win at Tottenham Hotspur. Now, joining me today to look ahead, and we'll have a quick look back at that win at Spurs, is John Gibson. John, I'm going to credit you here because you gave a heck of a rallying call to Newcastle United players ahead of that game at Tottenham. You asked for passion, for pride, you asked for effort, pride in the badge and pride in the shirt. They listened. If they did hear it, they certainly listened.
They did. I was delighted with the performance. It was more the Newcastle we know and we love than what we've been seeing recently, which was masquerading under black and white colours. This was the real black and white performance. Dominated the game, thoroughly won it. My only worry was when they got back to 1-1 with the first corner of the game after an hour, and we had 11 corners or something. Yeah. I thought all of a sudden, because it's Newcastle United, the modern Newcastle United, the doubts, 19 points given away from a winning position, late goals regularly conceded. But no, this time it was different. They come away, scored an absolutely beautiful winner, and I was absolutely delighted. I've got to say, in the interests of accuracy, that they're awful. I mean, they were so awful, the manager got the sack the next morning. I mean, that's what we did to them. But, I mean, they were awful, but we don't care. You can only beat what's in front of you, and what's in front of you was Spurs, and they were well beaten, and we needed that. And I was pleased for Eddie because, he is normally such a quiet, reserved guy. He's never too high, he's never too low. He's on an even keel. And then when he was pushed forward by the players, he almost lost it. The hand was up in the air, and he was giving it and I thought, is that Eddie? It doesn't look like Eddie. And then all of a sudden, it was as if he realised what he was doing and he faded back into the background, which is what he likes. Yeah. It was very un-Eddie, but it's understanding because both managers went into that match under pressure. Frank was under a lot more pressure than Eddie. I don't think Eddie was anywhere near the sack with the people that matter, which is the owners. But it was lovely because it endeared him back to the crowd, and he wanted that. But he looked as if he'd gone through the ringer. And he must do because the pressure was enormous. But it worked, and we were so much better. And it was good because all of a sudden we saw the team selections, and he was brave again. He went without his two centre forwards. By the way, if ever there's a condemnation of Voldemort and Visa, it's that it will play a centre forward who's a winger who never scores goals in the Premier League and leave them two on the bench. And Gordon did well. I thought Gordon did well in the false nine, but the performances was Ramsey. I was thrilled for Ramsey. Willock was terrific. Elanga was terrific. So there was good things about it.
Well, I think Ramsey's a good start point for the preview for Villa because obviously going back to his former club on the back of, his first goal for Newcastle on the back of, I would say unquestionably his best performance in a black and white shirt, in a blue shirt for Newcastle. Looked like the player Newcastle thought they were getting when they paid 40 million, I thought, and looked confident. And also, I think what's been quite underplayed is just how good his finish was. It was a lovely finish.
Oh, beautiful finish. The whole move, I mean, it was a terrific ball from Gordon. The outside of his foot laid off, and it was a real good finish. Ever so slowly, he's looked a better player. And he had a huge reputation at Aston Villa, both with the crowd and his teammates. He was injury prone, and that was the only worry I had about him when we got him. And he got an injury, and he was a slow starter. But he's sort of coming to the fore. I'm hoping the same thing's going to happen with Elanga, who is looking a little bit better, not as good as Ramsey at the moment, but looking that bit better. But I mean, for Ramsey to go home, I'm delighted for him because he's got his dignity, he's got his pride. and he'll walk in there with his head held high. It wasn't a good game from, I think, when we lost 2-0 here. You know, I felt sorry for him because he's got his reputation with the punters as well as the players down there. But it was just what he wanted and just what we wanted before he goes to Villa. And, good on him. Another goal there would do us the world of good and him a world of good.
It certainly would. I mean, sometimes when players go back to former clubs, you say they've got a point to prove, but I get the feeling, a little bit like when Elliot Anderson came back to us with Forest, there was no point to prove there. Both deals were sort of, we know the reasons behind them. It was FFP. They were kind of forced on Newcastle and Villa. But he can go back there and try and make an impact for his current club rather than hampering his old club or proving a point.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he'll be well received by the Villa crowd. Because he was a bit of a favourite. Not if he scores a winner for us, he won't be too well received, but he'll be well received by the travelling Geordies, won't he? But I'm pleased for the lad. He's needed it. And he is a talented footballer. The only question mark there's ever been against him is his fitness record. And he's getting fitter and looking that better player. And we need him because our much vaunted midfield of last season, when you think of Bruno and Tonali and Joe Linton in the cup final, dear, oh dear, they were fabulous. But that's no longer the case.
No.
Bruno is still a good player. Big Joe is injury prone a lot. He gets a lot of injuries. His game's physicality. And Tonali's fallen off the end of the world. I mean, he concerns me, immensely. What happened to that young man whose athleticism, whose desire, whose passion, whose vision, who got it all over the park and looked wonderful? He looks as if he's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders now, Tonali. And we know what happened the last time we saw somebody go down that particular road. And I'm looking. Perhaps he will get inspiration from Ramsey because I think he'll probably have to play at Villa because I can't see Bruno making it. With the injury he picked up and he was hobbling, and I know he tends to come back quickly and want to come back quickly with his desire, but I can't. There's then a game out in Baku on Wednesday, and then there's Man City. They're thick and fast. Would you risk Bruno in this? We need a performance from Tonali, and we need the performances that Ramsey and Willock have looked like giving us and have started to give us. We need that to continue down there because it'll probably be won or lost in midfield. They've had midfield problems themselves, and it'll probably be won or lost in there. And a lot will depend on Ramsey producing it yet again and Tonali getting a grip himself. For goodness sake, Sando, whatever it is that's bothering you, whether it's your head scrambled by a possible move or whatever, let's please see the guy that we used to see. Because even when he come on at Spurs, if you remember, Mark, he looked sluggish. And he gave the ball away a couple of times, and I had to look closely to make certain it was Tonali, because it's a Tonali of today, but not of yesterday. And we need the yesterday one very, very quickly because I've got a suspicion that he'll start down there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that with Bruno's injury. As he said, it looked, I think Eddie hinted it could have been cramped, but he thought it may be worse. I realised we saw Gordon come back quickly from a hamstring injury for Tuesday night, but I think the Bruno one does look a little bit worse, and that's a real concern because his importance to Newcastle United, it can't be underplayed, can it?
Oh, I mean, it's enormous. His desire, his ability, and the fact that he's a lucky mascot, and that's not by accident. We never win when he's not. That's not by accident. That's because of what our midfield loses when he is no longer there. And of course, what makes it even more difficult at the moment is that Joe Linton's out, he would be out, and Miley's out. And that is a shame because if Miley went in with Willock and Ramsey, it might look a little lightweight from the three heavyweights of last season, but there's quality there. But we will suffer. That's why if it isn't Bruno, and it's only 2 or 3 days after the injury that he's been asked to go again. It's a heck of a ask. But if it isn't, it's got to be Tonali because we haven't got the option of Miley, and that is a big blow.
The FA Cup, you followed Newcastle and reported on Newcastle a lot longer than I have. My first ever game in Newcastle was an FA Cup game against Swindon Town in January 1988. I was brought up on stories of your Milburns and Mitchells and Keebles and players like that. It's always been an important part of the club's history right from day one, and when it was a competition that everyone wanted to win. But this season, look, we can sit here and comfortably say this is Newcastle's last realistic chance of silverware this season.
Oh, literally, because hey, we can say not realistic chance, last chance. There's no realism about it. We're not going to win the Champions League or the Premier League, are we? And we're already out the Carabao Cup, having had a good run in it over 2 years. We've won it and got to the semi. But this is the last hurrah of this particular season. If we lose, we want to go on. I was brought up with the FA Cup because as a little lad, in the 50s, I was sitting in front of my auntie's black and white telly, watching Newcastle win it 3 times in 5 years, and looking and thinking, by the way, this is what the future holds for Gibbo. Isn't it wonderful? We've never won the FA Cup since. I've gone to Wembley in 74, I've gone to Wembley in 98, and I've gone to Wembley in 99, and every time we've lost in the FA Cup. We won in the League Cup, of course. But I was brought up with it, and I used to talk to Jackie about it, Jackie Milburn, because I wrote a lot of his books, etc., and he was a great dear friend of mine. And he said, Gibbo, when we were playing, we often were in a good position in the league, but once the FA Cup started, we weren't bothered about the league. We let the league, because the FA Cup had drama. It had romance. It had a huge finale, a day out at Wembley, television, everybody building the whole week round Wembley. He said, they don't do that in the league. You don't win the league with a big London Palladium type finale. You do with the FA Cup, he said, and we were obsessed about the FA Cup. And because of that, we've won the Cup 6 times and appeared in another 7 finals. That's the history of Newcastle with the FA Cup. We haven't got a history with the League Cup until recent times, but we have with the FA Cup. And it was always the great one to win, the ultimate prize. And if you're an older generation fan, that has stayed with you. That love of this competition has stayed with you. And, this is a big game between historically two big clubs historically. So, yes, and you can make out a case. It's not automatically going to happen, but you can make out a case whereby the winners of this could easily win the FA Cup.
Absolutely, yeah. And faced each other in the final back in 1924, I think it was.
They did.
Newcastle winning 2-0 that day.
But, you weren't there, were you?
I may look like I was, but no.
Even I wasn't there. But yeah, I talked to old Stan Seymour about it. He played in that final, and I think he scored. And a lot of people went down by boat, from the time down the coast in a boat and up the Thames, and then to the game. It was lashing down with rain. It been consequently a poor match until 10 minutes from time, and then we won it with 2 goals. And this is two historic teams, historic clubs. Not so much today. We both got great pasts, but not too much present. But we're sort of both stirring ourselves that we might well be starting off to do things once more. But it's a big match for every reason. Historically, it's a big match. It's a big match for Ramsey. It's a big match for Unai Emery because he turned down Newcastle to go to Villa, and he's done terrific at Villa. It's got to be said. I've never forgiven him for turning us down, but we're quite happy to have got Eddie. And I'll just point out to Unai that Eddie's won a trophy up here, and he hasn't won a trophy at Aston Villa yet. Mind, he's standing 3rd top of the league, so he's not doing badly. But they ain't won a trophy yet. But yes, it's going to be a big game.
And it's a really good point you make about the fact that whoever comes through this game will be viewed as one of the, you'd imagine, one of the favourites to go on and win it. And that kind of heightens the pressure of the game, the relevance of it. Not that it needs to be win the FA Cup, but if Newcastle can come through this, and it is a big ask at Villa Park, we know good as side Villa are. We saw that at St James's Park. But if they can get through this and get to the 5th round and the draw for once falls in their favour, Wembley dreams will start again, won't they?
Oh, of course they will, and so they should. That's the romance of football. That's why we all love football. That's why, as little lads, we got into football, for the romance, for the possibility, for the dreams. You've got to live your dream. If you don't live your dream, what's the point in, what do you take from football? That's what you take. You always dream that someday that'll be us. And last season it was. And in this season, let's do it again. If we get through this, or if Villa get through this, they're as much a favourite as anyone else. Because on any given day, we can do it. We proved it last season, home and away with Arsenal and then Liverpool in the final. We were second favourites in a 2-horse race in all of those 3 games, and we won the 3 games, twice against Arsenal and then once against Liverpool. It is possible. The difficulty is getting over this hurdle first, because it is a huge hurdle. And the thing that sobers me up is remembering the game at St James's Park just the other week. They were full value for the victory. I've got to hold up my hands and say, and they were very professional about it. The dark arts, the lot, they won it. We were a little naive. They were streetwise, and they won it well. I've just got a little feeling that they've got a little bit tired like us. Their squad's not big. They've had a few injuries, like we had them at the back. They had them in midfield. They're getting through. The 1-1 the other night, but their performances aren't great. So there's hope there. The difficulty is there's no safety blanket for us. In the old days, you could bring them back up to St James's for replay. 90 minutes goes, a whistle blows, and it's 0-0, 1-1, 2-2. You've got to go another half an hour, and then you've got to go penalties. It's got to be decided on the day. That makes it harder for the away team.
Yeah,
because they've got 2 hours to win it in before they have to go to penalties, haven't they? On home territory.
Of course. You hinted over sort of fixture congestion there. Newcastle, of course, go to Carabag. I'd imagine we'll fly out there Monday. Maybe even earlier, given how far they've got to go. But yeah, I'd imagine it'll be Monday. Obviously, they've got that game Tuesday night as well. They'll have to take care of. So we know Eddie's options are limited by injuries to key players. But what sort of side do you see being put out at Villa Park?
He's got to put, for me, we'll see what he does, but for me, he's got to put out his best side. Yeah. I mean, we've got to qualify for the knockout last 16 of the Champions League, but we're not going to win the Champions League, Mark. We could win the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Now, can you imagine the season he's had, the trauma he's had, the pressure he's been under from some fans? If he could win the FA Cup to end this season with the FA Cup, my job, would he be walking on water? Would he feel that he's been vindicated and there is a God in the sky and the sun does come out on Geordie land, although we haven't seen it for so long? So he's got to put out his... Let Cowboy take care of itself. He could mix and match a bit over there because they're not a sensational side, Mark, them.
No.
In Baku. They're not a sensational side. And we have a second leg. We can do them here. And I expect us to do them here. This is a one-off. And this is the cup. And this is a possibility of a trophy. You're almost going to run the right flag up if you don't pick your best side before you start. So I believe that he's got to pick a side to win on the day, and that's his best side.
So my next question will be, what would that side be for you? Because obviously in cup competitions, you have seen Ramsdale come in to play. I personally think I could see that happening. You'd imagine Lewis Hall may come back in, which means does one of Botman and Chiao drop out to allow Byrne to go to centre-back, but I think that would be harsh on those two because I thought they were incredible at Tottenham, admittedly, against a poor Tottenham side. But the big question is the front three.
It is. I mean, I would bring Hall back for certain because I'm a big Dan fan, but I'm a big Dan fan at centre-half. At left back is sometimes like a tug trying to turn around in the river, isn't he? He's pretty slow and he needs a few strings to help pull him around. He gets exposed in that position. That's not his fault. That's the way he's built. But I wouldn't want to see him out there too often. I would play Hall at left back, and then you go Bernard Botman for the left side of the centre halves. We've already talked about the midfield, which takes care of itself. If Bruno doesn't play, Tonali comes in, and we stick with Ramsey and we stick with Willock. Well, I mean, before I start up front, I would play Langer outside right.
I agree.
Because Murphy is not showing what he showed last season, whether it's because he's carrying a little bit or whether it's because he's not a one-season wonder. I don't want to label that on the lad, but he had one terrific season, and this has never indicated he goes back to that, and he wasn't before that, Mr. Wonderful. So I would play a Langer. I wouldn't play any of because I want to win this game, I wouldn't play any of my two centre-forwards because at the moment they can't burst a balloon. I would play Gordon again at centre-forward. And that means it's got to be Bonds unless you played Willock out there on the left wing. And you can't afford Willock on the left wing because you need him in the midfield with Ramsey and Tonali. Yeah. So Bonds, who possibly looks as if he needs a rest, but he can't score goals. And as much as it says what it does about Wissa and Voltemade, and I'm not suggesting Gordon's a wonderful centre forward, but he causes problems, and the way he set up the Ramsey's winner, and that was clever feat. And I know fans aren't in love with him too much at the moment because they suspect him, and there's all sorts of rumours about him. But I would go with him at centre forward, and I would let the midweek trip in the Champions League take care of itself. Yeah, let's win this one first. Yeah, if we go out of this, as you said, right at the head of the programme, what are we going to win this season?
Yeah.
So let's have a go in this.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, Gordon has been linked with a possible move away in sort of recent weeks and months. But I looked at him Tuesday night, and I think it's the first time I've looked at him as a number 9 or in that striker role and thought, you know what, I can see why Eddie is persisting with it, because his press allowed Newcastle to move forward, and it just eased a little bit of pressure. Whereas Voltemade and Wissa can't really do that job, and you get the feeling.
And Voltemade can't do that job.
No, but you get the feeling at Villa Park, Newcastle are going to have to be brave, and they're going to have to go at Villa and press them high. And Gordon, if he does what he does on Tuesday, will be a big part of that.
Yeah, he's got the pace and he's got the willingness to press high. Wissa doesn't seem fit enough to be able to press high, and Voltemade is one pace. Whatever else he is on the plus side, he's one pace. And the great thing is, when you look at him, and it's one of the first things Alan Shearer picked out about him, is that he's come into a press. When he first came in, he was doing well. He's come into a pressing side, but he can't press. He hasn't got the pace to close down quickly, or the willingness or the desire to do that. It's not part of his game. I feel sorry for the lad because he'll wonder why he come here. And I wonder why he come here as well. Simply because his type of player doesn't fit into the type of team we are. And that must bemuse him, poor lad, because he must think, well, what exactly did they buy me for?
Yeah.
You know, they must have, when we scouted him, we must have seen that he was one pace. We must have seen that he's not physical despite his size, that he's average in the air despite good. Yes, he's got great feet. Yes, he's got great vision, and he's got a clever brain, and he wants to make it work. But we must have seen the minuses and then looked at this team and said, how does he fit in there? As you say, we've spent all that money on Wissa and Voltemade, but neither of them can press from the front, and that's our game. And Gordon will give us that.
Just one general one, just to finish off. It's just been announced this morning, we're recording this on Thursday lunchtime, that Thomas Tuchel's agreed another deal with the FA to remain in charge with England. Now, you don't need me to tell you that one of the favourites to get the job, if he hadn't have signed that deal, would have been Eddie Howe. So in some ways, does this kind of benefit Newcastle? It gives a bit more clarity to Eddie, to the club?
Yes, I suppose it gives us clarity. But I don't know that it makes that much difference. I don't think Eddie is looking yet for an international manager's job, because I think he would miss the day-to-day involvement desperately, because that's what he's all about. And I think he's more of a a club manager at the moment. He's young enough to do this later on, and I think he'll probably end up doing it. But I don't think he's ready for it yet. But yes, it closes that door off that he's staying. But it's going to have a greater impact elsewhere than Newcastle, like, for example, in Manchester United, where they might have been looking at Thomas Tuchel as somebody they want to appoint after the World Cup. But then you've got Spurs with Pochettino perhaps wanting to do that after the World Cup. But that's their problems. It's lovely. We've been talking about having managerial problems at Newcastle. And by the way, just because we've beaten Spurs, I don't believe that's all over and we are now in grasslands and lying with sunglasses on, getting a lovely tan, because it's not so at all. Our next 3 games is away at Villa, away in Baku, and away at Manchester City. Lose those 3 and we'll be talking like we were talking a little while back.
Yeah.
We're still not out. It's been a wonderful respite, but we're not out of the woods by a million miles. We've got to follow that up, and that's why this match is so interesting. Can we build on what we've just seen? Because often we haven't built.
Yeah.
You know, and even when we had the super result in Paris Saint-Germain, wasn't a win, but it was a terrific result. We didn't come back and win games.
No.
You know, we haven't built on our little oases that we get. We haven't built on them, and that's what I'm looking at this game. Apart from wanting a run in a competition I adore, and the only one we can win this season, I'm looking for some sort of consistency that we're putting it together, and not just flash in the pans. We've had so many false stones this season, and we just don't want this to be another one. And that'll be what Eddie's saying to the players. You know, let's go out. You saw how thrilled the away fans were. Now, a lot of them will be the same ones in the ground at Aston Villa. A lot of the fans that were at Spurs.
Yeah.
Let's give them some more. You know, when you go out in the morning for a paper, people will smile at you since Spurs. They would probably turn their coat collar up and go on the other side of the road before Spurs. So, you know, do you want a little bit of that, or do you want a little bit of that? So let's go and get the plus.
So it's all eyes on Villa Park on Saturday evening as Newcastle look to take another step on the road to Wembley. And as we've said, keep alive the only realistic chance of lifting silverware. John, thanks for joining us again. Before we go, a big thanks to NordVPN. Hit the link in the podcast description box to get a discounted offer on your NordVPN plan. One subscription can be used across 10 devices, and there's no risk with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I'll be back ahead of the Villa game with a view from the opposition, and then it's all eyes on Villa Park. And then we'll start looking forward to a mysterious trip, we'll call it, to Baku in the Champions League for that tie against Karabakh. We'll see you next time.